The wind howled across the broken land, carrying the smell of smoke and death. Buildings once tall and proud now lay in pieces, walls cracked open like eggshells. Fires still burned in some corners, lighting up the dark sky with an orange glow. And, in the middle of this dead city, a small alien girl crawled on the ground. Her skin was pale blue, covered in dust and ash. Her clothes were torn, her face streaked with tears. Every few seconds she coughed weakly, the sound lost in the wind. She was the only one left. Her people had run when the enemy came. Those who could fight stayed behind and died in the battle. The rest had escaped in ships, leaving the weak behind to save themselves. They thought the little girl was useless, too small, too sick, too slow. She had watched the ships rise into the sky without her, her heart breaking as the engines roared away. Now she was alone. The girl pulled herself into the shadow of a broken wall, hugging her knees to her chest. The night was cold, and her thin clothes did nothing to keep her warm. She had no food, no water, no family. The only thing she had left was the will to keep breathing. Above her, the sound of drones buzzed in the air. Enemy machines searching the ruins for any survivors. If they found her, they would not ask questions. She closed her eyes tight, praying they would pass. Then a new sound. Heavy footsteps, uneven, crunching over broken glass. The girl froze. She had learned to fear every sound. Soldiers came to kill. Hunters came to capture. No one came to help. She pressed herself tighter against the wall, trying to disappear. The footsteps stopped. Through the smoke, a figure appeared. It was not one of her people. Tall, broad shoulders, armor burned and cracked from battle. A helmet. Under one arm, a strange black rifle slung across his back. His other arm hung limp at his side, dripping blood from a wound. A human. The girl had seen humans before, always from far away. They were the soldiers who had come to fight the same enemy that destroyed her home. But she had never spoken to one. This one looked tired. His face was dirty, with cuts across his cheek. His eyes scanned the ruins carefully until they landed on her. The girl's heart pounded. She didn't know what he would do. The man stepped closer, slowly, like someone approaching a wild animal. He crouched down, leaving his rifle on the ground. "It's okay," he said softly. His voice was deep, calm. She didn't understand the words, but the tone made her pause. He reached into a small bag at his side and pulled out a silver packet. He tore it open and held it toward her. Inside was food, dry rations, the kind soldiers carried. The girl stared at it. Her stomach twisted painfully. She had not eaten in 2 days. But she didn't move. "Here," the man said again, placing the packet on the ground between them. Then he leaned back, giving her space. For a long moment, neither moved. The fire crackled somewhere in the distance. A drone's hum echoed above, then faded away. Finally, hunger won. The girl crawled forward slowly, eyes never leaving the man's face. She snatched the food and retreated back a few steps before tearing it open with shaking hands. The taste was dry, salty, strange, but it was food. She ate like she had never eaten before. The man watched her, silent. He reached into his pack again and pulled out a small bottle of water. He took one sip, then handed the rest to her. This time, she took it without hesitation. For the first time since the attack, she felt something warm in her chest. Not food, not water, something else. Hope that the man didn't leave. He sat down near the wall, keeping his distance but not walking away. He looked exhausted, like someone who had carried too much for too long. The girl wanted to ask why he was helping her, but she didn't know his language. So she just sat there, clutching the empty packet, staring at him through the smoke. He didn't speak either. He just looked at the sky, listening for drones, his rifle ready at his side, for the first time. In days, the girl didn't feel completely alone. And as the wind blew cold across the dead city, The human soldier and the alien girl sat together in silence, two strangers brought together by war, neither knowing what tomorrow would bring. But tonight, she was not abandoned. The night was long. The alien girl didn't sleep. She sat near the broken wall, watching the human soldier as he cleaned his weapon in silence. He had given her food, water, even a blanket torn from his own pack. Yet she didn't trust him. Why would she? Everyone she knew had left her. Some had even pushed her aside when she begged for help. And now here was this human soldier, stranger to her world, who stayed when even her own people ran. She didn't understand it. The soldier glanced at her sometimes, but said nothing. His eyes were sharp, always scanning the darkness for movement. The air was full of danger drones, patrols, scavengers. One mistake and they would both be dead. The girl hugged her knees tighter. She didn't know his name. She didn't even know if he would be here tomorrow. But for now, he was the only living being who hadn't turned his back on her. At dawn, he stood and motioned for her to follow. She froze. He wanted her to go somewhere. The man pointed toward the horizon, then tapped his chest, then hers. His meaning was clear. Come with me. It's safer than here. She shook her head violently. Safe? Nowhere was safe. She had seen soldiers dragged away screaming. She had seen entire families burned in their homes. She wasn't going anywhere. The soldier sighed, ran a hand through his dirty hair, and looked around the ruins. Then he did something she didn't expect. He took off his pack, placed it on the ground in front of her, and stepped back. Inside were food packets, water, a small flashlight. All the things keeping him alive. He left it for her. Then he turned and started walking alone, rifle in hand, disappearing into the fog. The girl stared after him, stunned. Why would he leave everything for her? He didn't even know her name. She looked at the pack, then at the fog where he vanished. Her heart pounded. Something inside her, something small and buried under fear, told her to run after him. Before she knew it, she grabbed the pack and followed. They walked through the ruins for hours, the soldier always keeping an eye on the skies. Twice they had to hide as enemy drones passed overhead, scanning with red lights. Once, when she tripped on a broken pipe and fell, the soldier quickly lifted her up and pressed her against a wall, his hand covering her mouth as a patrol marched. By her heart hammered in her chest. If they had been seen, they'd be dead. But the patrol moved on. Only then did he let her go. She didn't run this time. By midday, the sun burned hot above the broken city. They stopped near an old fountain, long dry, its stone cracked and blackened by fire. The soldier opened another food packet and split it in two, half for her, half for himself. She watched as he ate slowly, like someone used to hunger. When he offered her the other half, she didn't hesitate this time. She sat next to him and ate in silence. He gave her water too, making sure she drank first before he took a sip. The girl didn't understand his language, but she understood this. He was keeping her alive. That night, as they camped inside the ruins of an old store, the girl finally spoke, just one word. Her voice was small, cracked, unsure. She pointed to herself and whispered something in her own language, a name. The soldier looked at her, surprised. Then he pointed to himself and said his name slowly, so she could understand. For the first time since the attack, the girl felt a tiny seed of trust take root inside her chest. But danger was never far. As they rested, a new sound rolled across the night, the low mechanical growl of engines. The soldier grabbed his rifle instantly. He motioned for her to stay quiet and peeked through a hole in the wall. Through the fog, he saw lights moving. Armored vehicles, enemy soldiers, searching the ruins. And then he heard it, through their speakers, a message repeating over and over in broken words. Reward for survivors. Alive, big reward. They weren't just hunting humans. They were hunting her. The soldier looked back at the girl. She didn't understand the words, but when she saw his face, she knew one thing: they were coming for her. The night was no longer silent. Engines rumbled in the distance. The ground trembled as armored vehicles rolled through the ruins. Searchlights cut through the fog like sharp knives. Voices shouted orders in a language the girl didn't know. But she didn't need to understand the words. She understood the danger. The human soldier's face was tense as he peeked through a crack in the wall. His rifle was ready. His eyes studied the movement of the soldiers outside, counting numbers, watching patterns. He didn't look afraid, but his jaw was tight, like someone who knew the odds were bad. The girl crouched behind him, hugging the pack to her chest. Her heart pounded so loud she was sure the enemy could hear it. One wrong step, one broken branch, one cough, and they would be dead. The soldier turned to her and made a simple gesture. He pointed far to the east, then tapped his chest in hers. He wanted to move. The girl's throat was dry. The soldiers were everywhere. The drones hummed above, scanning the ruins with red eyes. But staying here meant death. She nodded quickly. They slipped out the back of the ruined store, moving low, staying in the shadows. The soldier's steps were silent, careful. He moved like a ghost. The girl followed, copying him as best as she could, dot at every corner. He stopped, listened, watched. Twice they had to hide as searchlights passed close enough to blind them. The soldier pulled her into the hollow of a burned-out car, covering her with his arm as boots crunched past just meters away. The girl's hands shook. She clutched his sleeve so tight her knuckles turned pale. But the patrol moved on. Hours passed. As they crept through the ruins, the soldier knew the city was no longer safe. He had to reach the human outpost before dawn. If they stayed here, the enemy would close the net and crush everything inside. The girl didn't know what outpost meant, but she understood the way he looked at the horizon. It was hope. Just before sunrise, they reached the edge of the city. That's when the dogs came, mechanical hounds, metal beasts with glowing eyes and jaws that could tear through steel. They moved fast, sniffing the air, scanning for movement. The soldier froze. The girl clamped a hand over her mouth to keep from screaming. The hounds fanned out, moving through the rubble, their heads jerking side to side like hunting animals. One of them turned toward their hiding place. The soldier raised his rifle slowly, his eyes cold and steady. The girl's heart stopped. If he fired, the whole pack would come. If he didn't, the hound would find them anyway. The hound crept closer. Closer. Its metal jaws dripping oil, its sensors glowing red. The soldier tensed. Then, from the ruins to the left, a wall collapsed with a crash. The hounds turned instantly toward the sound. The soldier didn't waste a second. He grabbed the girl's hand and ran. They sprinted through the rubble, the girl stumbling to keep up. Her legs burned, her lungs screamed, but she didn't dare stop. Behind them, the hounds barked with mechanical roars, their metal claws tearing through concrete. The soldier fired over his shoulder, 3 sharp shots. One hound fell, sparks flying from its head. The others kept coming. They darted into an alley, leaping over debris, turning corners blindly. The girl's small hand clung to his like it was the only thing keeping her alive, because it was. Finally, they reached a collapsed bridge stretching over a dry riverbed. The soldier pulled a small device from his belt and pressed a button. A single green light blinked in the distance, the signal of the human outpost, but it was still miles away, and the hounds were closing in. They slid down the rubble into the dry riverbed, using the broken walls for cover. The soldier fired again, short bursts to slow the pursuit. The girl stayed close, her breath coming in ragged gasps. At one point, he stumbled, blood dripping from his leg where shrapnel had cut deep days ago. The girl stopped, for the first time. She put his arm over her shoulders and helped him walk. She was small, weak, half-starved, but she didn't let him fall. When they finally crawled into the ruins of an old tunnel to hide, the sun was rising. The soldier set trip mines at the entrance before collapsing against the wall, breathing hard. The girl sat beside him, still shaking. She wanted to speak but didn't know the words. So she just pressed the last water bottle into his hands. He drank, then gave it back to her. For a moment, in the middle of this hunt, they shared the silence like it was the last safe thing left in the world. Outside, the hounds prowled. Soldiers shouted orders. The net was closing. And the hunt was far from over. The day passed in silence. The soldier and the alien girl hid inside the old tunnel, waiting for the enemy patrols to move on. The sun baked the ruins above them, but the tunnel stayed cold and dark. Rats squeaked somewhere deep inside. The soldier checked his rifle, counted the bullets left. Too few. He tightened the bandage on his leg, wincing at the pain. Every step now felt like knives cutting into his muscles. Girl watched him quietly. She didn't understand his words, but she understood pain. She had seen the way he limped, the way he clenched his jaw but never complained. When he gave her the last piece of bread, she tried to push it back into his hands. "Eat," he said, softly shaking his head. She hesitated, then ate slowly, her big eyes never leaving his tired face. For the first time, she realized something. He was risking his life for her, and she didn't even know why. As night fell, the hunt returned. Engines growled again. The sound of boots and metal claws echoed above the tunnel. Soldiers shouted orders. The searchlight swept over the ruins like angry eyes. The soldier tensed. He peered through a crack and cursed under his breath. The enemy wasn't leaving. They were setting up camp. By midnight, the ruins burned with floodlights. Drones hovered above. Mechanical hounds prowled the streets, growling low, smelling the air. And then explosion. A flash of fire lit the night sky as enemy soldiers destroyed the last building near the tunnel entrance. Debris rained down, shaking the ground. The girl covered her ears, trembling. The soldier grabbed his rifle. "They know we're here," he muttered, even though she couldn't understand him. The first hound came through the tunnel entrance. Its red eyes glowed in the dark as it crept forward, metal jaws opening and closing with a chilling click. The soldier raised his weapon. Click! Boom! The trip mine exploded in a shower of sparks. The hound screeched and fell in pieces, smoke filling the tunnel, but more came. The soldier pulled the girl deeper into the tunnel, firing short bursts as red eyes glimmered in the smoke. The girl clung to his arm, heart pounding, the world a blur of fire and noise. They broke out of the tunnel into the ruins beyond, just in time to see enemy vehicles rolling toward them. Guns mounted on top. The soldier dragged her behind a collapsed wall as bullets tore through the air. Concrete shattered. Above their heads, he returned fire, hitting one of the vehicles. It burst into flames, lighting up the night like a second sun. But there were too many. The soldier looked at the girl. His chest heaved. Sweat and dust covered his face. "Run," he said, pointing to the east where the human outpost waited miles away. She shook her head violently. "Run!" He shouted again, his voice raw, full of anger but also fear for her. She didn't move. The enemy closed in. The soldier pulled out his last grenade and threw it toward the approaching hounds. The blast lit up the street, fire consuming metal, bodies, but the victory lasted only seconds. From the north, more soldiers came. From the west, drones buzzed low, their red lights scanning. The circle was closing. The soldier grabbed the girl's hand and ran through the fire. Smoke burned their lungs, heat scorched their skin. But he didn't stop. An enemy soldier appeared in front of them. He shot him. Point dash blank. Another drone dived from above. He blasted it out of the sky. Each bullet was a heartbeat closer to the end. At last, they stumbled into an abandoned factory on the edge of the city. The soldiers slammed the door shut, locking it with a metal bar. He collapsed against the wall, coughing, his hands shaking from exhaustion. The girl crawled to him, clutching his sleeve. Terrified he was hurt too badly to go on, he gave her a tired smile. "We made it. For now," he whispered, but outside, the fire kept burning. The enemy wasn't giving up, and the night was far from over. The factory was silent except for the soldier's heavy breathing. The alien girl sat close to him, watching his chest rise and fall. His face was pale under the dust and dirt. His leg wound had opened again during the fight, blood soaking through. The bandage. She wanted to help but didn't know how. So she tore a strip from her own clothes and pressed it against his wound. The soldier didn't stop her. He was too tired to argue. Outside, the fire burned, lighting up the night sky with an angry red glow. The enemy was still searching. The sound of engines and drones never stopped. But for now, the factory walls kept them hidden. The girl sat back and hugged her knees. Why did they want her? Why had her own people left her? She had so many questions she couldn't ask, because she didn't know his words. But the memories came back anyway. She remembered her father, tall, always busy, speaking in whispers with other scientists. She remembered the strange metal box he kept locked in his lab. She remembered the day soldiers came to take him away, and the way he shouted for her to run before the bombs fell. Her father had told her once, "You must survive. What is inside you must survive." She hadn't understood then. She was beginning to understand now. The soldier sat up slowly, wincing at the pain in his leg. He looked at her and spoke softly. She didn't know his words, but his tone was gentle, curious. She pointed at herself, then pressed a hand over her chest. His eyes narrowed slightly, like he knew she was trying to say something important. She drew in the dust on the floor, a rough circle with smaller dots inside. Then she pointed to her head, then to the drawing. The soldier stared at it for a long moment. His face changed. Understanding hit him like a bullet. She wasn't just some abandoned child. She carried something in her mind or her blood, something powerful enough for the enemy to burn cities and chase her across worlds. Maybe a secret weapon. Maybe knowledge that could end the war. Whatever it was, she was the key. And now they were both trapped in enemy territory with every hunter on the planet searching for her. The soldier leaned against the wall, closing his eyes for a moment. He had thought he was just saving a child. Now he realized he was holding the most valuable life in the galaxy. And if the enemy got her, it would all be over. The girl shifted nervously. Through a crack in the wall, she could see lights moving closer again. The enemy wasn't giving up. She touched the soldier's arm and pointed toward the east, the direction of the human outpost. He nodded grimly. They had to move, but before they could leave, a shadow fell across the doorway. The soldier raised his rifle instantly, aiming at the figure stepping inside. It wasn't enemy soldiers. It was a man in black armor, his helmet marked with the symbol of the enemy empire. A bounty hunter. He carried no army, no drones, no hounds. Just one long rifle strapped across his back and knives at his belt. The kind of man who didn't need help to kill. The soldier pushed the girl behind him, keeping his weapon steady. The bounty hunter raised his hand slowly. He spoke in a calm, cold voice the girl didn't understand, but the soldier did. "She's worth a fortune," the hunter said. "Step aside. I only need the girl." The soldier said nothing. The hunter smiled thinly. "I'll give you 10 seconds to decide." The girl clutched the soldier's sleeve, eyes wide with fear. She didn't know the words, but she understood the tone. They would kill him and take her. The soldier answered with a single shot. The bounty hunter dove behind a beam as the bullet tore through the wall. Then the factory erupted in chaos, gunfire, shouts, sparks flying. As metal clanged against metal. The girl crawled under a broken table as bullets ripped through the air above her. The soldier moved fast, firing from cover to cover, keeping the hunter away from her. Finally, the hunter fell with a crash, his rifle clattering to the floor. The factory went quiet again, except for the crackle of fire in the distance. The girl peeked out, trembling. The soldier limped toward her, grabbing his pack. They had to leave. The enemy now knew exactly where they were. As they slipped into the night, The soldier glanced at the girl. She was shaking but alive, and he knew one thing for certain. Now the secret she carried was worth dying for. The night felt heavier than ever. Smoke still rose from the ruined factory behind them, the bounty hunters. Body lay somewhere in the rubble, but his death had given away their position. Now the enemy knew exactly where they were. The human soldier limped through the broken streets with the alien girl close behind him. His wound burned with every step. The pain was a fire crawling up his leg, but he didn't stop. He couldn't. The girl's small hand clutched his sleeve tightly as if letting go meant death. They reached the edge of a wide canyon, the last stretch before the human outpost miles beyond. But before they could climb down, the distant hum of engines returned. The soldier froze. From the north, armored vehicles. From the west, drones hovered low, red lights blinking like hungry eyes. From the south, soldiers moved through the ruins, rifles ready. They were surrounded. The girl looked at him, her face pale in the moonlight. She didn't understand tactics, weapons, or war. But she understood one thing. This was the end. The soldier knelt beside her, speaking softly. She didn't know his words, but his voice was steady, calm, like he wasn't afraid at all. He pointed toward a narrow path, leading down into the canyon. Then he pointed at her, and then at himself. He stayed behind. She shook her head violently. Tears filled her eyes, but the soldier's face was firm. He handed her his water, his flashlight, his spare ammunition, though she didn't know how to use it. Finally, he pulled a small metal disc from his pack, pressed it into her palm, and closed her fingers around it. A signal beacon. She understood now. He wanted her to run toward the outpost and send the signal. The humans would come for her, but only if someone stayed behind to keep the enemy busy. The engines grew louder. The soldier turned, his rifle ready. Through the smoke, the first drones appeared, followed by soldiers moving in tight formation. Their spotlights swept across the canyon edge until they found him, standing tall among the ruins, a single human against an army. The girl grabbed his sleeve one last time, shaking her head, tears running down her dusty cheeks. The soldier looked at her and forced a small smile. "Run," he said softly. She didn't understand the word, but she understood. The look in his eyes. It was goodbye. She ran. Her small figure disappeared into the darkness. The beacon clutched tight in her hand. The soldier turned back toward the approaching army. He checked his rifle, his grenades, his knife. Not enough for victory, but maybe enough for time. The first drone swept low. He fired. The machine exploded in a ball of fire, raining metal across the canyon floor. The soldiers opened fire. Bullets tore through the walls around him. He dove behind a pile of rubble, returning shot for shot, each round echoing through the night like thunder. Grenades boomed, smoke filled the air. Fire lit the darkness red. The enemy pushed closer, thinking he would break. He didn't. Minutes turned into eternity. He moved like a man with nothing to lose, one step ahead of death itself. Every time they flanked him, he fell back to another position, forcing them to chase him instead of the girl. But he was only one man, and they were too many. At last, he reached the broken walls of an old tower overlooking the canyon. His rifle clicked empty. He tossed it aside, pulled his last grenade, and waited as the enemy closed in below. The girl was gone now, far toward the outpost. That was all that mattered. He pulled the pin. The blast lit up the night like a second sun, tearing through the base of the tower. The structure collapsed in fire and dust, burying the soldiers below in rubble. The canyon fell silent except for the crackle of flames. When the dust settled, the enemy vehicles were burning wrecks. Drones lay shattered on the ground. But the soldier, he was nowhere to be seen. Far away, on the other side of the canyon, the girl ran with the beacon in her hand, her small legs carrying her toward the human outpost in safety. She didn't look back. She couldn't. The night sky still glowed red behind her, but the alien girl didn't stop running. Her small feet stumbled over rocks and broken metal, but she clutched the signal beacon tight in her hand. Her chest burned with every breath. Her legs felt like they would break any second, but she didn't stop. She couldn't. Somewhere behind her, explosions still shook the ground. The human soldier was fighting an entire army alone. For her, she didn't look back. She was too scared of what she might see. At last, she reached the edge of the canyon floor. Her hands shook as she pressed the button on the beacon. A small green light blinked, then flashed brighter, sending a signal into the night sky. Please, she thought. Please come. Minutes felt like hours. Then she heard it, the low rumble of engines in the distance. She froze, heart pounding. Were they enemy soldiers? The sound grew louder. Lights appeared over the ridge, not red like the enemy drones, but white, sharp, clean, human soldiers. Armored vehicles rolled into the canyon, guns ready, searchlights sweeping across the ruins until they found her small figure standing alone, covered in dust and smoke. A voice called out through a speaker, "We've got her." "Secure the area." Strong hands lifted her gently into a vehicle. A medic wrapped a blanket around her shaking body. She didn't speak. She couldn't. Her eyes were locked on the burning horizon behind them. The human commander knelt in front of her. "Where's the soldier who sent the signal?" he asked softly. The girl just shook her head. She didn't have the words to explain. The convoy moved fast toward the outpost. Soldiers scanned the skies, ready for ambush. Drones circled above, keeping watch for enemy forces. Inside the vehicle, the girl sat silently, clutching the blanket tight. Every bump in the road made her flinch. Every explosion behind them made her heart jump. But no more enemy soldiers came. The soldiers' last stand had worked. They reached the outpost at dawn. Tall metal walls rose above the desert floor, searchlights sweeping the horizon. Inside, human soldiers moved quickly, medics rushing to treat the wounded, officers barking orders. The girl was led inside the main building, given water, food, and clean clothes, but she didn't touch the food. She didn't smile. She sat by the window, staring at the empty desert behind the walls. Waiting. Hours passed. Finally, a shout came from the gates. The girl jumped to her feet as soldiers ran toward the medical tents. And there he was, the human soldier, carried on a stretcher, his armor scorched, his face pale but alive. The girl ran to him. He opened his eyes slowly as the medics worked on his wounds. When he saw her, a small, tired smile crossed his face. "You made it," he whispered, his voice rough. She nodded quickly, tears running down her cheeks. For the first time since the attack on her city, she felt safe. Later, when the commander questioned her, they discovered the truth. She was the daughter of the alien scientist who had built the enemy's most powerful weapon. But before the enemy could use it, her father had hidden the final access codes inside her memory, locked, so deep only human scientists could retrieve it. That's why the enemy wanted her, and that's why her father had told her to survive. At any cost, the girl stayed at the outpost as the humans prepared to move her to safety. She visited the soldier every day. While he recovered, they still didn't share a language. But they didn't need one. When she brought him water, when she sat by his bed, when he gave her a small smile despite the pain, it was enough. They had survived together when no one else had believed they could. Weeks later, when the humans evacuated the outpost, the soldier stood beside the girl as ships waited to take them away. She looked at the sky nervously, clutching his sleeve again like she had that first night. He placed a hand on her shoulder and nodded. "It's over," he said softly. She didn't understand the words, but she understood the feeling. As the ship lifted into the sky, leaving the burned planet behind, the girl sat beside the soldier, watching the horizon disappear below them. For the first time since her people left her to die, she felt something warm spread through her chest. It wasn't fear, it wasn't hunger, it was hoped at a new beginning.